Welcome back to the channel, boys and girls, and I've got a brilliant little video for you today, and it's all about the pellet feeder. Now it's an absolutely brilliant feeder, this, often forgotten among anglers in favour of like the method feeder, the banjo style feeders, but the pellet feeder, trust me, especially now it's we're coming into autumn now, the fish have been absolutely nailed all summer, and the pellet feeder can be a lovely little trap that keeps those bites coming. But the first thing we've got to get right before we even look at any of this is the bait, so let's show you how we do that first. Okay, so the first thing that we've got to get ready is the feed pellets. Now all we've got for the session is literally some micros, fishery pellets here at Packington, and some expanders for the hook. We'll talk about each one of them separate. Now, pellets need a lot of time for this. You want them really spongy with literally no binding potential at all. If you've ever soaked micros in the past, you'll know about this, but they tend to go through a few different stages. Like when you first soak them, they'll be quite tacky, still a little bit hard in the middle. Then they go a bit spongy and a bit wet and they can almost like go a bit paste-like. What I'm trying to do is get past both of them stages to the point where the pellet is fully absorbed, it's taken on every bit of water it can, and it's started to dry off, so it's lost all of its tackiness. For the pellet feeder to work, it's best when the pellets are fully absorbed, they've lost all the tackiness, so you can judge it yourself how hard you want them in the pellet feeder. They want to go in there, nice bit of air in the feeder, push themselves out, lovely. But it takes a bit of time to get to that point. So it's no good, if you want to go pellet feeder fishing and you want to start preparing your pellets 10 minutes before your session like you can do with a method, you can't really do that with this, you need to give them time. So I've just got here this morning, I just want to get my pellets ready so that they're ready to go. In hindsight, I'd like to do them the night before so they get even longer, but obviously I haven't got that luxury because of the fishery pellets. So what I've got is a nice big flat bowl, which is important because I'll show you why. So we'll get them in there, give them a little shake to get them flat. Now the reason I have a nice sort of flat bowl rather than something like this is because I don't want the pellets like piling up on each other, so you get wet ones at the bottom and dry ones at the top. I want them nice and even. So if I get a nice flat container like this and get a nice even spread of the water, so do that, and I just want to cover the pellets a little bit more, and that's it. So it'll probably take a good hour, I should imagine. So it'll take all that water on now, but importantly, every pellet's getting an even soak rather than, like I say, some at the bottom getting more than the ones at the top. So just something to bear in mind. This nice flat container really helps push them out there so that they're all getting the same amount of water, and then you get a nice consistent result. Just got them covered with water, no more, no less. So that's nice. So like I say, they'll take a bit of time, so I'll just put them to one side, let them absorb, and like I say, if you can do this in the morning, even better. But if not, don't worry about it. Now for hook bait, all I've got is some expanders, they're just pros. Now what I like to do for the pellet feeder, I want them a little bit tougher than what I would for the pole. So rather than, I've just soaked them in water like I already would, then I pour away the water, and I just put some fish oil in. Does two things, it just toughens the pellets up a little bit, but also I can put them in the fridge and they won't degrade, so I can just keep getting them out of the fridge, use a few pellets, put them back in the fridge after the session. So nice and simple stuff. We'll come back to these in like an hour or so. Okay, so the bait's had a little bit of time now, and as you can see, after about an hour, they've gone lovely and fluffy. So we've got 2 mils, they're fully expanded, and they've had time to soak up all that water now. And then I've transferred them into a bowl, and they're nice and spongy and nice and soft. Like I say, preferably, I'd do this the day before though, so that they've had even longer and dried out even more. So that's kind of what you're looking for, nicely blown up 2 mils, absolutely perfect. Like I say, all I've got is a little pot of expanders that I take with me. That's it for the hook. I don't have any wafters or anything like that. You could probably use them, and you could use some maggots, but just to keep things simple, they're eating pellets, so I've got a pellet on the hook. Tackle wise, now the feeder, I like is the ICS pellet feeder. Now the ICM one's also really good. It's a much smaller feeder than that. So in the winter, I'd probably use the ICM version. But for now, they still want a little bit of bait. The small ICS one is perfect. You could even use a medium, I think. Now the way I've got it set up is simplicity in itself. I'm going to get out of this bush. I've got a little 9-foot rod, which is one of the new Superior X's. Lovely, lovely, lovely little rod this. It's only a 20 odd yard chuck this, and it's perfect for the 9-footer. But the key is the actual setup itself. So we've got an elasticated stem, and the whole key to this is to keep everything nice and compact, nice and like discreet, if you like. So we've got £6 main line, and we've got a 30 gram feeder. The reason we've got 30 gram is on this lake is quite a decent slope over there, so I want to be able to hold the bottom with a decent amount of weight. But importantly, I've got a 2-inch hook length. That's 0.15, a little 18 kkh hook on, and that little 2-inch hook length is so important. The reason is how you load the feeder. You want to be able to get everything in there, tuck it inside that feeder and create that perfect little trap. So I'm going to show you that now. So when it comes to loading it, it's really simple. I've got a rapid stop on the end of my hair rig. You could just hook an expander on, I'm sure it would work fine, but I like a rapid stop. So I've got it on the needle. Hopefully this camera is picking it up. Find yourself a nice expander, pop it on there, pull the needle out, and you've got a nicely mounted little 4mm expander. Really discreet up bait. Almost matches the feed perfectly. Now the loading process, basically what you're trying to do is trap some air in there so that the pellets just come out nice and naturally. So you don't want to be squeezing these too hard. You want to just sort of almost like fluff them in, if you like. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to just gently press them in there, nice and soft, barely any pressure, and because the pellets are prepared right, they're still going to like flush out quite nicely. A little thumb recess at the top of the feeder for your pellet. Pop the pellet on top, a little bit more, just another little cap of pellets, and that is it. Perfect little trap. Because our pellets are right, they're going to release. No problem. The hook length's hidden in there, the hook bait's hidden in there. I could chuck that right amongst the reeds and it'd be safe. The reeds wouldn't be knocking the bait off. And then slowly but surely the front half of the feeder would just break down, exposing the hook bait. Round the tip goes. It's a perfect little trap. And for some reason, when there's a lot of F1s particularly, this feeder can really, really score. So there you have it, that's the pellet feeder. We'll show you now where we're going to fish it and how we're going to catch loads of fish with it. Okay, so we've discussed the bait, we've discussed the tackle, now let's get on with it. Now we're on Little Geary's Lake today, which full of fish and a great little water to fish the feeder because it's a lovely width. It's sort of, I don't know, 20 odd metres wide. I've not measured it or anything, but I'd guess it's probably 22 metres wide, something like that. Lovely little chuck. Now, your initial reaction would be, get it as tight to the far bank as possible. And don't get me wrong, that can work, but the water level's quite low at the minute. It looks like there's a good foot missing out of this lake. And as I've been setting up and fishing a little bit this morning, you can see that the depth is probably only 8 or 10 inches over there, tight to that bank. Now that's fine if there are a lot of carp in the lake, but when you're targeting F1s, they do seem to like a little bit of depth. A little bit more water definitely helps them feed a bit more confidently. So what I'm doing is fishing about 1 metre off, where I imagine it's probably 18 inches, maybe 2 foot deep, just a little bit off the bank. I've clipped up tight and then taken a bit off. So I have got the option to unclip later and go really tight in, because there will be a stage in the day when an odd carp's about and you'll have to go tighter. But to catch these F1s, which are the main target today, I'm definitely going to have to drop short. I like a bit of cover as well, and here we've got some nice reeds across there, and there's a lovely little gap in the reeds where I can chuck into and get tight in that shallow water. But I've just come off just to the left. There's a lovely little bay with some reeds in it. I think that's going to be perfect. So we've got the feeder loaded up. Let's get it in there. Now there's a couple of bits just before we do go out there. You'll notice I've got my rod rest almost pointing at the spot. That's really important. We're fishing on a slope. We want to be as accurate as possible. So as soon as I hit the clip, I'm down onto my rod rest, pointing it at the thing, at the feeder, and I'm trying not to put any tension on it whatsoever, so that there's no chance of me dragging it down. Because if I have my rod bent with the line floating on the top or anything like that, I may just disturb the setup. So pointing at the rod rest, pointing at where I'm casting, straight down on the rest, pointing at the feeder, and we're awaiting a chance. So nice long drop as well. I like to try and cushion it in. I've got a 30 grammer on there, nice in the back. then straight down. So I've hit the clip and I'm already on my rest. My line's on the clip, so I've not had to take up any slack. That means I'm exactly where I've clipped up. There's no bounce back or anything like that. The only reason you'd have loads of line to reel in is if the feeder's bounced back, which this hasn't. It's right on the clip there. So we're nicely set now. We've got slack line, because you don't want too much tension on it. Like I say, if you get too many liners, you're just going to move your feeder. So nice and slack. You'll see the bite because we've got an elasticated stem. The fish is going to hook itself, no problem, with that little 2-inch hook length. And we're just waiting. Now, I won't give it too long. I've got myself a brew. I'm not using a stopwatch or anything like that. You could do, no problem, but I like to give it sort of 2 or 3 minutes and then I'll re-chuck. Oh, little indication there. Just a little liner, but because I've got that slack line, it's not like a massive liner that's going to move the feeder. It's just a little, picking up a bit of slack line and then dropping back. So I'm happy that that feeder hasn't moved. As soon as I feel like the feeder's moved, I will reel it back in. So you may be thinking, well, why use a pellet feeder over a conventional method or a banjo style? And it's a great question. And it's one that's really hard to explain. But I know that when I fished this venue and venues where there's a lot of F1s, a pellet feeder just seems to perform. I can't explain it. I think maybe the F1s feed a little bit differently to carp. Carp are a bit more aggressive and love that method feeder, that pile of bait. Whereas F1s are quite happy to really get in the feeder, and having the method ball open with all the bait around it is almost too easy for them. They just come in and eat all the bait and not get hooked. Whereas with this pellet feeder, it's reducing how much bait's in your peg because it's trapped within that feeder, and it's just a few morsels that come out and then your hook pellet's right in there, and it's the perfect little trap. Like I say, after a summer when they've been absolutely mullered on method feeders and stuff like that, this little pellet feeder can be really good. So that's coming up to the end of the cast really. I think I don't want to give it too long because I'm trying to build a swim. Basically what I've done, I fished a little bit before I turned the cameras on. I was chucking in front of me. I've caught quite a few fish there, a dozen or so fish. And now it definitely slowed up. So what I'm doing, just like you would with a pole, I've started up a new swim. So I've moved probably 3 or 4 metres to the left into the next lovely looking sort of bay over there. And we're starting again. So it may just take a couple of casts just to get it going again. But we're having plenty of F1s, like up to sort of £3, nice fish. Perfect for this sort of 9-foot rod. So I'm having a few indications. And what I'll do, I'll whip it back and rebait. Now the reason I like the expanders for this is just because it's such a light, small, discreet hook bait. You barely even know it's there, and I just think when these fish have had a gutful all summer, it's a nice option rather than something a bit more blatant. So we just press the first lot in, but not too hard on that little ledge what we've made, and then that's it, nice and easy. There's actually some bubbles coming up right where I'm fishing. I don't know what that's all about. Nice little chuck, hit the clip, down on the rest, nice and easy. I can't stress how important it is to get your pellets right though. That doing them in that flat tub, giving them plenty of time. Like I say, they would be even better if I'd have done them the day before, so that they're really, really expanded and lose that tackiness. You just don't want that tackiness with them, because obviously the pellets are just going to get wedged in there. There we go. Took a couple of casts, but we've got one. You see that lovely little 9-foot rod, so nice. Perfect for like this. Like I say, this lake's full of F1s. You do catch an odd bonus carp, but I do think when there's F1s about, this pellet feed is so effective. Lovely. See that little 2-inch hook length there? You see that? So it's worth, if you can, doing it with an elasticated stem, just because it gives you that little bit more cushion. Nice F1. But as you can see, for these F1s, it's so effective, it really is. And I know a lot of the guys on the club circuit swear by these, and yet, high, you know, I don't hate using the term high level or elite match anglers often turn a nose up at it, but it's so effective because you just got everything in such a little tight pile. It's a perfect trap really. So there we go, so we press them in, we've got the air in there crucially. You can see the air in the back, you can see the gaps. I've not squeezed the life out of the pellets, and then just another little cap. So get it back on the spot. Nice. In one motion down. Clunk the bail arm over, and like I say, the line's on the clip, which suggests to me that I'm exactly where I need to be. I've got my butt rest right here. Everything's direct, everything's perfect. I don't need to touch anything. I'll just take up a bit of slack, and then we're waiting for the next one. There we go. Took a little bit longer than I expected, that second fish, but we got one. That was obviously just chucking off to the left a little bit in a new spot. But we got him. Nice F1 to end on. Lovely. So there you go. Nice little demo on the pellet feeder. It's like I say, it's a beautiful, beautiful tactic. You know, especially for F1s. It does work for carp, don't get me wrong, but where there's lots of F1s around, it's a brilliant, brilliant method, and one that can catch you loads of fish, especially now the water's starting to cool off. So there you go, guys. Thanks again for watching. Like and subscribe. Get your comments in below. Have you had a good day with a pellet feeder before? Is it something you use? Is it something you're going to try now? Let me know below, and hopefully you'll be catching loads of beautiful F1s just like this.